Well, hey everybody, John Retlin here, and this is every NWA WCW TV champion ranked from worst to best, Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. And if you hadn't seen Part 1, where I ranked 53 through 21 as far as the champions, please check the link up here. Yes, 53 different people held this prestigious, and then at times not prestigious, TV championship, and there were always a 10-minute, 15-minute, or sometimes even 30-minute time limits that took place on pay-per-view. 30 minutes didn't happen very often. It was usually 10 to 15, maybe 20, if they really wanted to settle a feud. But often I really did enjoy what they did with the TV title. And there were some good ones in the previous list, or the previous part of the list. But this is where things are really going to get a lot more praising. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail on everybody, but these are really, to me, the most prestigious, men to hold that respective championship. Which I feel bad about saying one of these guys here in a little bit, but I'm just going to start off with number 20, and we'll see how long this show goes. And also, one's lined up, I just want to tell you really quickly, other ranking videos, Cruiserweight, Light Heavyweight Championships, those are actually going to be combined, and then NWA, WCW Tag Team Championships. Those will be done at some point. I'll probably actually be writing those down over time at work and whatever, and have those lists done sometimes when I have free time, which is never, but anyway, let's get on with this. Number 20, Jimmy Valiant, a.k.a. Charlie Brown, when he was in a mask. 260 days, 2 separate reigns. Jimmy Valiant, whether he was in tag teams, whether he's Boogie Woogie Man, whether he was in, Memphis for a little bit, whether he was in Crockett, wherever he was, Jimmy Valiant was super fucking over. It really didn't matter what Jimmy Valiant did. He, the way he talked, the attitude he had, the way he drew people in. Jimmy Valiant was really goddamn over for a number of years. I mean, it's a shame that not a ton of footage exists. Some exists on the network that shows him in his better days, but some shows him at the very end when he was still good, but obviously he had age and mileage and stuff like that, and that catches up with everybody eventually. Hello, Goldberg and Undertaker at Super Showdown. Didn't see you there because you were too busy dropping each other on each other's heads. Fucking Christ. Back to Jimmy Valiant. Great TV champion. He was somebody that the crowd was always loved. I mean, they either loved to hate him or they loved to love him. And the Charlie Brown gimmick was ridiculous, because it was him under a mask. And it was silly, but Jimmy Valiant could make anything work. And him as TV champion was absolutely wonderful because he was a great worker. Even though he didn't look like he could be, even though his body changed quite a bit, he would work out, or he'd, get to where maybe his, a bit tubbier would kind of fit the gimmick and everything, that kind of stuff. He could change his body and really transform his look to suit the needs of the territory or his character or feud or whatever, and that's a testament to just how great Jimmy Valiant was, even if he was under a mask. Number 19, 2 reigns, 166 days, Lex Luger. I hate praising Lex Luger. It's actually 168 days, sorry. I stumble over the fact of praising Lex Luger. But I did do a list about United States champions at some point and had to put over Lex Luger. I hate to do that, but I have to put some biases aside. Lex Luger was a pretty good TV champion. I believe he was TV champion even at the time when he was tag team champion with Sting back in 95, 97, or actually I think it was 96, which was really, really odd that he was a dual champion. Usually they didn't allow that all that much, even in the Monday Night Wars, and then they just threw all the rules out and everything, but Luger, as far as not being necessarily the world champion, even though I will concede that his reign in 91 to 92 was not bad because he was a heel and he was easy to dislike, mainly because of the whole thing that happened with Elizabeth. But his TV title run, he's actually, he wasn't a bad mid-card champion because he never really could be featured as the guy. To me, he was just never the guy. He could never be committed enough to be the guy. I never felt that he was the main eventer that everybody felt he could be, or at least everybody in the companies that he worked for, whether it was WCW or WWE. But as far as TV champion, US champion, the guy was fine because he could occasionally have good matches, at least with people that could get the stuff out of him. He could not lead a match to save his goddamn life, but as TV champion, hey, it was better than making him world champion, I'll say that much. Then we get to number 18, Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare, 182, 192 days. It depends on these figures. because you get some of these from Wiki, which of course is the most reliable source of information for wrestling because anybody can change it. But Nikita Koloff is a pretty damn good TV champion. He actually had one of my favorite matches of the Jim Crockett era, at least as far as like, Starrcade and stuff like that. And actually, I would say one of my favorite Starrcade matches ever was him versus Terry Taylor at Starrcade 87. And you would think, wow, shit, you like a Terry Taylor match? And I know it surprises some people because I do kind of shit on Terry Taylor, justifiably so, since he's a piece of shit. But it was a pretty goddamn good match and really cemented Nikita as not being great in the ring. Because he was never great in the ring. But he was powerful and he got over, and when he eventually switched babyface, because the crowd got to where they loved him, it was hard not to root for the guy. Now, sure, he was pretty much out of wrestling by 92 because he suffered a horrible neck injury in a match against Vader, I believe. But even though he still makes appearances, I still fondly remember him as TV champion. He's a pretty damn good TV. Him as TV or U.S. champion, he was pretty goddamn good. Great flashes of greatness, but still, as a mid-card champion, he was pretty goddamn good. Then we get to number 17, the Great Kabuki, 185 days. Great Kabuki, when he was in WCCW or Crockett, was pretty good. I like Kabuki. The Great Kabuki. You know what I mean? What they say Kabuki or the Great Kabuki. I mean, you can go either one. But he was pretty damn good. Flashy, the paint, the mist, all that stuff. He had a pretty cool style to him. Now, I mean, granted, you see him later on, everything, he was broken down, didn't really do all that much. But in his heyday, he was decently flashy. He wasn't anything like Muta, but the mist, the look and everything, and the fact that he was a great heel, and Gary Hart is his manager. I mean, what the fuck else is he going to do? How else is he not going to boo a guy that's managed by Gary Hart? And I love Gary Hart. I'm just saying he was easy to dislike because he could just make you hate. He can make you hate him and hate anybody that he manages by association, even if that person was a really good worker. Hell, he made you hate Chris Adams. I mean, Chris Adams was pretty damn likable in world class. But Kabuki, very good talent, holding it for just over 6 months. Pretty good testament to how good he was. Number 16, Ivan Koloff. 182 days, 3 reigns. Okay, so he did not get to hold it as long as his brethren, Nikita, but he got to hold it over 3 reigns as long as that. And Ivan, really, I think gets forgotten about is just how good he was as a heel. He still took big backdrops and some big moves, even into his 40s, even when it was pretty obvious. I mean, he shouldn't have been taking those moves. He was still doing it. He's probably even doing it into his 50s. But Ivan was one of those guys. I mean, fuck, he beat Bruno in the Garden for the title. But then you go to his time in Crockett, he could always deliver great matches. The amount of times he bled, the chain, the Russian chain, the Russian gimmick, even though it was kind of like overdone at that point, even in the late 70s into the 80s, he was still somebody that you could just love to hate. I mean, eventually he got to where he got cheered massively as he was about to leave the company, as he was about to ultimately retire, or at least be semi-retired and make occasional appearances. But TV champion, yeah, he was a great foil for any babyface to go up to. Really got nothing bad to say about Ivan Koloff. Number 15, the Great Muta, 121 days. Yes, I love the Great Muta. This is a little biased. I'm sorry. I show a little bit of bias. Yes, 121 days compared to some of these reigns may not seem like much since it was only 4 months, but Great Muta, the one thing that they should have done, this is another thing I heard in a Jim Cornette podcast, it was about Great Muta being turned babyface. It was the one thing that everybody agreed with Jim Herd on, which didn't happen that often, that Muta would have been a great babyface. Gary Hart convinced him otherwise that it wouldn't have worked. And maybe it wouldn't have. Muta may have only been a babyface for 6 months. People would have shit on him, and then he would have gone back to Japan. But I loved Muta as a kid. The guy was fucking over as hell with me because it was a different style. Jushin Thunder Liger, Great Muta, and Masahiro Chono to an extent, but mainly those first two, Muta and Liger, were the ones that introduced me to that style of Japanese wrestling and the tape trading and stuff like that. And that's why I went over to a neighbor's house, my friend's house, who is just a neighbor of mine, and his uncle would always get the tapes, and we would always watch stuff from Japan. I don't know how he got them, but it was impressive, and I love watching Liger and Muta and stuff like that. But anyway, his brief run in WCW, Muta's that is, his full-time run, the matches he had with Sting were incredible. Great American Bash 89 that I'm actually been watching here in a bit. Probably not today, but I'm going to do a retro review of that. So make sure to check that out. And I'm going to have ones up of like, clashes from 89 and stuff like that. I'm going to have plenty of retro content coming up. But I love the Muta Sting rivalry. It's just a shame they basically jobbed him out at Starrcade 89 and he left soon after. That was kind of ridiculous. As much as I love Starrcade 89, it was not the best use of Muta. But him as TV champion and him as Sting fighting over that, pretty goddamn good. I really couldn't say much bad about Muta. And fuck, he showed up in the Battle Royal at G1 Supercard to a fucking thunderous reaction. I was absolutely losing it. I almost wish I had gone there, except I couldn't afford it at the time. But here we go with number 14, Sting, 114 Days. I love Sting. Sting's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, top 10 easily. He's not top 5, and that's nothing against Sting, but it's hard to rank. It's hard to crack the top 5 when it's from 5 to 1. It's Ric Flair at 5, Liger at 4, Randy at 3, Eddie at 2, and Bret at 1. And usually Eddie and Randy like trade between 2 and 3. But the whole point is Sting's still top 10. Sting's absolutely incredible. And that guy, it's a shame that he was never a long reigning world champion. His longest reign, I think, was from Great American Bash 90 to just after Starrcade 90. So I think he held it for about 6 months. I think he dropped it to Flair in early January. So it was like about 6 months. And that's a shame. But TV champion, yeah, that's when the TV title meant something. And Sting was goddamn good. And they actually he was TV champion and then feuded with Muta. And then they did a disputed finish thing at Great American Bash 89, which was absolutely great and led to the TV title having some good momentum, even though it was vacated for a bit. I love the feud that they had. They even had great matches at like the WCW New Japan Super Show in '91. I believe it was March of '91. I think, which was a great match. It was on I think the Wrestling's Highest Flyers set, which was a great set to have, by the way. I don't know if it's on the network cut, but I love the Sting Muta rivalry. That's why I put them at 1 and 2, or, right next to each other, rather, 14 and 15, because they were in lockstep as far as the TV title went. Number 13, Johnny B. Bad, 240 days, 3 reigns. I think Johnny B. Bad was pretty damn fitting for WCW. Now, the gimmick got overdone. The gimmick was pretty silly, but the performer, he was pretty, Mark Marrow was pretty good in WCW. His time in WWE, didn't work out all that well, necessarily. But as Johnny B. Bad, for a while, it worked. Now, he would have eventually had to have become more, real and everything, and a little more, and a little less cartoonish. But his style worked pretty damn well, and, TV champion, he was fine as a TV champion, or even a U.S. champion. He's never going to be a world champion. But he made that TV title matter quite a bit more than I think maybe people want to give him credit for, myself included. Having to think about how he... I think he wrestled Honky Tonk Man at Halloween Havoc 94. He managed to somehow not have Honky Tonk fall on his big fat ass, because that's all Honky Tonk ever could do. He was never any good in the ring. Honky Tonk was not good in the ring, and I'm sorry. I don't care how good he was in Memphis. I don't care about Memphis wrestling. That's not to say Memphis wrestling doesn't matter. I'm just saying that it never spoke to me. But his time in WWE was shit. One of the worst Intercontinental champions of all time. Don't care if he's the longest reigning one. And he was in WCW for a cup of coffee when he never should have been there. Johnny B. Bad, having to wrestle him, he should have gotten a goddamn pay raise for having to carry that slug to a passable match. And then Johnny B. Bad, feuded with DDP for a bit over the TV title, which was pretty damn good. And then he would leave, I think, shortly after Super Brawl. They was shortly after Super Brawl or Uncensored. It was one of the two. But Johnny B. Bad was pretty goddamn good. Really good TV champion, good solid worker. WWE run just didn't work out. And then we go to number 12, Baron Von Raschke, 217 days over 2 reigns. Baron Von Raschke, yes, AWA stalwart, and somebody that was actually somebody that many people forget actually wrestled in multiple companies, and only saw him you only saw him near the end when he was totally fucking broken down. It's a shame because he's a pretty good brawler. He was a really good heel. Eventually got to where you cheered the guy because he was just, he had done so damn well and gotten so much momentum behind him and so many years in the business, you were like, well, we appreciate this guy because he's stuck around and he's been in multiple companies and everything. It's hard not to cheer for the guy. But he was a great heel, the whole thing with the claw. And that is all the people need to know. That was one of his quotes that he said. But him as TV champion, yeah, pretty damn good in the Jim Crockett promotion era, even though it was earlier before they really got on pay-per-view and everything. Von Raschke was pretty goddamn good. We get to number 11, Dusty Rhodes, 3 reigns over 227 days combined. Dusty never had to have a title long to stay over. Whereas Hard Times Dusty Rhodes, where there's feuding with Tully Blanchard, and that's mostly who he feuded over, the TV title with. And it's hard really to have a bad match with Tully Blanchard, especially in the 80s. I mean, I'm sure he had bad matches. Everybody has bad matches, but it was hard to see a bad match with Tully Blanchard when you see just how fucking good Tully was. And Dusty was a perfect babyface to put up against Tully. So yeah, you really couldn't find any bad match with them. Their feud was incredible. And they feuded off and on and everything. And I want to say they feuded quite a bit. Was it 85 or 86? It was one of the two. Because I know that Magnum and Tully feuded over the U.S. title in 85. But it was impossible to not root for Dusty and not to boo the fuck out of Tully Blanchard. Don't worry, I'm going to praise Tully Blanchard here in a bit. But Dusty was just great. He just misses the top 10 because number 10 was Paul Jones, 679 days, 5 reigns. One was 368 days. Paul Jones, many that were just remember him as a manager with the Hitler stash, and yeah, that wasn't a very good idea. You need to try to find footage of Paul Jones being a really good worker. Now, was he the greatest? No. But could he play both face and heel? Sure. And 368 days. I mean, one reign of just over a year. And that was back when sometimes titles were hot potatoed, sometimes titles stayed on people forever. It was a testament to how much faith they had in Paul Jones to give him the title for just over a year. But 679 days, even if you take that one out, like you take out the 368-day one, that's still 311 days over 4 reigns. So you combine, or no, wait. Yeah, 311 days. Sorry, I had to try to do math in my head really quick. That's still something right there. That would be enough to get him in the top 10. One reign of that. I almost put him up higher. I decided to maybe go with some more modern ones here, since I haven't seen enough of Paul Jones in the ring to really form much of an opinion beyond knowing that he was really good and much more than the manager that people saw later when he had Paul Jones's army. But yeah, pretty damn good guy. I see why people praise Paul Jones's work. And number 9, Rick Steiner, 211 days, 3 reigns. I mainly put Rick Steiner up here because of when he beat Mike Rotunda at Starrcade 88, ran around the goddamn ring celebrating like he won the goddamn World Cup or the Stanley Cup or the Super Bowl trophy or the NBA title or the World Series. He just ran around like crazy. It meant so goddamn much to him. It was really, really cool. Now, he would be TV champion later on, even in 99, and then Scott Hall would win it from him and throw it in the fucking trash. I think Scott Hall was disappointed because he couldn't drink the goddamn title. Yes, I know that's a cheap shot, and I'm talking about Scott Hall back then. Good on him for getting clean, but pretty fucking shit for that. But then again, Nash and Hall never really cared about titles. They only cared about the money. But anyway, back to Rick Steiner. That title win is the main reason I'm putting it up here. Now, yeah, his 99 title win was not all that great. But that brief 88 to 89 run, even though he didn't have it for that long, had to put him on here just for that. Sure, he only had it for just about 70 days combined, or 70 days over each reign, but still, on average, that's not that bad. Sure, he could have held it longer, but pretty damn good. Rick Steiner's a pretty good singles wrestler. A lot of people point to Scott and say the Scott's, the better of the two. Rick had some pretty good matches on his own. And then we go to number 8, Booker T, 204 days, 6 reigns. Yes, I referenced Chris Benoit earlier in the previous list. Again, the link is up here if you want to check it out. But yeah, it was a best of 7 series and stuff like that to turn into a best of 8 series. Yeah, Booker didn't hold the title for too long. If you do it on average, that's like 35 days. Maybe not even 35 days. He didn't have it all that long. Or maybe, something like that, but it's like 34 days. The whole point is Booker made that title matter. So sure, it He never had it for too long, but he always made the title feel more credible. So could he held it longer? Sure. We go to number 7, Ricky Steamboat. 4 reigns, 314 combined days. It is Ricky Steamboat holding the championship and delivering great matches and feuding with a few other people, including one in particular I'm going to talk about here in a bit, Ric Flair. It's Ric Flair that I'm talking about because they were in lockstep either over the world title in 89, the TV title in the 70s, 80s, late 70s, 80s, U.S. title. They were always in lockstep, especially over the TV title. You could not really find a bad Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat match, except if you put him in the ring now. Nobody really wants to see that. Even though I'm sure Ricky Steamboat could still go, I really wouldn't want to see Ric Flair at this point. But their matches were just absolutely incredible. And Ricky, he never had to have a championship too long. He did hold it for like 70, almost 80 days on average. I think it was like 76 days 78 days or close to it. He was somebody that you could always rely on to deliver a great match. And he was somebody that the fans could get behind. He was the perennial good guy. He was somebody that you could always love to support and everything. And even though fans started to boo him in 89, looking back at like his time as TV champion, may not last as long, but by God did he make that title matter. And then we go number 6, Ric Flair, 253 days, 2 reigns. Because he's Ric fucking Flair. Hopefully not at this point, at his age, but whatever, I'm not going to judge. Ric Flair is the consummate champion. Didn't matter if you gave him the WCW title, didn't matter if you gave him the TV, the US, it didn't matter what title you gave him. The NWA title, whatever. He made every fucking title matter. Yes, I love Ric Flair. Yes, I'm a little bit biased. No, Ric Flair is not a perfect human being, but by God, I can watch Ric Flair matches and not get bored. Watch his matches. I'm going to be watching, like I said, Great American Bash 89 at some point. Flair versus Funk. I'm very excited for that. Might even watch it right after this. But watching what he could do in the ring and all the great shit. Him and Steamboat, like I said, their feuds that they would have were absolutely incredible. And Rick holding it for an average of like 125 days, 126 days. That really is just a testament to just how much they trusted Ric Flair and how it built and built and built over a few years till he finally became NWA champion. And then when he finally became NWA champion and was locked in 1983 at Starrcade 83, when Gene Kiniski forgot it was a fucking cage match and kept trying to treat it like a regular match. That's the one thing that's always going to bother me about Starrcade 83. But that aside, Flair, just above Steamboat. I mean, you could really put Steamboat and Flair right equal because they always were. Number 5, Steve Austin, 1 reign, 431 days. I was really close to putting him in the top 3, but then realized I couldn't because I had reasons for putting the people in the top 3 that I did. 431 days. His time as U.S. champion was great. TV champion, I think it was from, because I know Rick Rude, I think Rick Rude was U.S. champion in 91. And I know Steve Austin was TV champion from 91, I think, to like sometime in 92. And I know he became U.S. champion later in the year. Sometimes the timeline's a little bit muddy to me, but 431 days. I mean, that's fucking amazing. That's like, 14 months? 15 months? Almost 15 months. I'm trying to do the math in my head really, really quickly, so I apologize. But Steve Austin, I almost wish that he would have gotten a chance at the WCW title, but well, bigger and better things were lying ahead for him in WWE, even after that unfortunate SummerSlam 97 pile driver botch, which kind of was reminiscent of what happened with Austin doing that to Chono at a New Japan show, I want to say in 92. But anyway, that aside, 431 days. You can't sneeze at that. I mean, you could if you're allergic to numbers, and that's weird, and you should get that checked out. But Austin was a great TV champion. Could always deliver a great match. Didn't matter if there was a couple hundred people, few thousand people, whatever. He delivered great matches all the time as TV champion. And number 4, Mike Rotunda, 433 days over 3 reigns. This is when he was, part of the Varsity Club. If you've only seen Mike Rotunda as IRS or VK Wall Street, you need to go back and watch some of his shit from the 80s. Even his stuff as US Express, in the US Express. When he was teaming with Barry Windham, but especially his stuff in the NWA. The guy was great. great in his multiple stints in the NWA. His time, teaming with the Varsity Club, his, teaming with Dr. Death Steve Williams, late great Dr. Death Steve Williams, perennial creep Kevin Sullivan. And Kevin Sullivan is a goddamn creep. I don't really fucking care what anybody says. He's a fucking weirdo. So am I, but I also didn't book my own goddamn divorce because he's a smart guy. Mike Rotunda, though. That guy, I could not really find much bad to say about him as far as, especially his later runs. But he did have a couple runs as TV champion, or at least one, before he went to the WWE. And Mike Rotunda, really forgotten about just how good the guy is. Fucking love a lot of his matches. And I referenced the Rick Steiner match at Starrcade 89. Well, 88. And then, God, what was it? What the fuck was it? Was it Chi-Town Rumble. Chi-Town Rumble 89. It wasn't Wrestle Wars. Chi-Town Rumble. Where he, beat Rick Steiner again to win the title. Chi-Town Rumble was a bit weird. I did do a retro review of that. I'll probably put a playlist of my old school wrestling reviews at the end of this. So you can check that out. But that was a lot of fun. And Mike Rotunda was just a great TV champion. Unfortunately, that second run, I think it ended when Sting beat him. And then he really did. He then became Captain Mike Rotunda and then went back to WWE and became IRS, which is a more famous character. But really, you guys need to go back and watch some of his stuff from the NWA. Because you think, okay, IRS, he didn't have to work all that hard. And it probably was hard to work in suspenders and a suit. But he was really fucking good. He really was. Number 3, Lord Steven Regal. 4 reigns, 557 combined days. When I think TV champion, with the exception of a couple, I think, especially in the 90s, that mid-90s period, I think, 93 to 96, I think Lord Steven Regal. In 93 to 94 especially, he had great matches with Steamboat. He could have great matches with anybody. He had great matches with Johnny B. Bad. He could really pull a good match out of anybody. And it's a shame that it's Lord Steven Regal, William Regal now, was not able to become WWE champion later. There was a bunch of reasons why, drug violation and all that. Well, wellness violation. But during his heyday, he made that TV title just as important as the world title. I'm serious. I would be locked in, even as a kid. And I hated Regal as a kid. But I would always admire just how great he was, how he would always find a way to hold on to that title. And just that, British smarmy attitude and stuff like that, and just the way he looked. I hated it. But I also couldn't stop watching just how good the guy was in the ring. And really, I encourage you guys, look up Lord Steven Regal matches, William Regal matches, like from WCW pay-per-views from 90, 93, 94. You won't be disappointed. And even some of the stuff they did on WCW Saturday Night, he really could always make a TV title match mean something. Even if sometimes the stall and everything at the end and whatever got a little bit old, leading up to it, there would always be some really, really good action. It's hard to find a bad Regal match, especially during this era. Number 2, Tully Blanchard. 3 reigns, 685 days. Tully Blanchard, second best TV champion of all time. That feud with Dusty Rhodes I referenced, the amount of matches, the way Tully could just get everybody to just want to fucking claw at him and just fucking want to murder him. I'm not saying that I'm not saying people should want to do that, but that's the kind of heat he could generate. He was just so fucking good. And it was annoying because you look like you should be able to beat the guy up. Most people thought, oh, I could beat that guy up. He's a little short shit. I should be able to beat him up. But he'd always find a way to hold on to the title. Didn't matter. It didn't matter what he did. Didn't matter what the opponents did to him. He would always find a way to pull that out. Sure, dubious methods or something like that. Or the referee distraction. Or he just beat people straight up. That slingshot suplex was the thing of beauty. He always could get a good match. Especially in the 80s. That Tully Blanchard, hard to find anything bad that he ever did. At least as far as in the ring and stuff like that. Fortunately, he seems to be doing great with his life now, and apparently is religious. Whatever, that works for him, cool. But his wrestling career, something I look back on fondly, and he made that TV title matter. But number 1, Arn Anderson. 4 reigns, 877 days. Arn Anderson should have been world champion. He should have been WCW world champion. I know why he wasn't, or at least I have an idea, but he should have been. Ability, promo, or ring ability, promo ability, the fact that he was so goddamn good in the ring, you could never find a bad Arn Anderson match. He could sell well for the baby faces. Even when he was a babyface, he, could still get the crowd on his side. He could get the crowd to hate him. Whether he was a heel, didn't matter. He was that goddamn good. And his runs with the TV title were absolutely incredible. I feel bad for the fact that he had to lose it to Tom Zink at one point. But yeah, his TV title runs were great. I mean, almost 900 days combined as TV champion. You tell me that that's not somebody that they really trusted and they knew they could rely on to be just one of the best champions they ever had. Like, seriously, I would say if we were to come up with best champions, period, in WCW history, Arn Anderson would be, and I'm talking all championships, Arn Anderson would be top 5. It just based on his TV title run alone, on his tag title run alone, tag title runs, he would be absolutely locked in as one of the best champions that WCW ever had. NWA, WCW, at least Jim Crockett Promotions. But yeah, I'm leaving off there with Arn Anderson because that is the end of this list. Thank you guys so much. Again, Cruiserweight, Light Heavyweight Championship list will be coming up at some point. I'm not going to put a specific day because I don't know. And also WCW, NWA, WCW Tag Team title list coming up at some point. And other retro reviews, mainly WCW stuff, because I like looking back on stuff because I'm burned out on the current product. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.